host, to our main speaker for today, Smriti Parikh, and also to Satish Shenoy, who will be the co-anchoring the session with me. Yet another series, Chief Auditor Series, yet another episode of Chief Auditor Series today. And I have the pleasant task of, introducing Smriti. Summer Audit brings these Chief Auditor Series as a knowledge series, for upcoming internal auditors in the country and abroad, and also for other chief auditors to learn from chief auditor experiences, their processes, their way of doing work, their thoughts. And not only are we going to interview the chief auditors, but also academics, educators, students, regulators, etc. So today is the 25th episode of Chief Auditor Series. So welcome once again, and let me formally introduce Smriti Parikh to all of us. She's the Vice President Compliance and Internal Controls of TotalEnergies Marketing India Pvt. She's been there with it since November 2019. Prior to that, she was with Bombay Dyeing, heads the compliance and internal control function, which includes all activities like risk management, compliance, IFC, investigations to SOPs, along with controls, testing, and internal audits. Instrumental in instituting a governance culture at the company and setting the tone at the top. Part of the managing committee at TotalEnergies. Prior to this, she worked with Tata Power for about 5 years. Since the formation of the internal department, was instrumental in setting up the department, building capabilities of the in-house team, automating and standardizing the internal processes and systems across the Tata Power group. In Tata Power, the internal function it got aligned and became IPPF compliant, which is International Professional Practices Framework compliant from IAA US. She further led the teams that created for Tata Power the various frameworks, IA policy, COSO framework, RCMs, IFC, headed the data analytics and system upgradation program for the IA function. Chartered accountant with 2 decades of experience, have got experience. She's a CA, CPA. She's got experience in India, in US, and she's worked on SOPs, completed special assignments, end-to-end, delivery systems in different industries, telecommunications, travel, media, tourism, NBFC, software and hardware service companies, and manufacturing industries. She's a BSI as an auditor for ISO standards for risk and business continuity. She's a CAIS at CPA from US, actively involved with the NGO Shramik Nari Sangh, which is dedicated to the empowerment of the underprivileged women. She has raised funds and participated in marketing, costing, assistance in manufacturing activities for the NGO, and actively participating in COVID-19 relief drive of the NGO. Additionally, I think it's important to know that she enjoys good food, spiritual books and discourses, classical dancing, and watching movies, and has won several awards, from IA and Tata Power. So I think young, dynamic internal auditor with lot of activities to accredit. So over to you, Smriti. All yours.
Thank you so much, Vijay. Hi, Satish. I'm happy to be here today with both of you, and to talk about what I do right now, share some practices that I have seen over the last 2 decades. So happy to do that. Should I share the presentation that I have?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Just let me know when it's visible.
Yeah, it's visible. You can make it full screen.
Yes.
Yes.
That's okay. All right.
Absolutely.
Great. So I just thought that I will take you through the foundation of how we've created this function, which is compliance and internal control at TotalEnergies, and then talk about various, some of the pillars that we defined, the objectives that we defined, and then how we are implementing it, so that I can share some of the practices that I use and, take it from there. So just a little bit about what we based our entire internal audit, risk management, as well as compliance So when I talk about compliance, it's from an ABAC perspective, but what we based our strategy on. So it comes from the TotalEnergies Code of Conduct, which has 5 main pillars, so to say, which is safety, pioneering spirit, performance-minded, respect for each other, and stand together. Now, when we look at compliance and internal control and governance as a function, we fall under a lot of these pillars. So when we talk about performance-minded, of course, we're helping with that. Respect for each other, that's anti-bribery, anti-corruption, zero tolerance. Standing together, meaning we work together as a team. And of course, safety and pioneering spirit. So the reason I put up this message is for everyone to understand that we're aligned to the group's main vision, mission, and objectives from there. So in fact, we are just a little bit about the company. We are present in about 130, now 140 countries with 1,000 companies worldwide and more than 1 lakh employees. So the scale of activities that we need to implement in terms of governance is quite wide. And that also means that we have to comply with many laws across the globe. So talking about laws, in terms of the focus area, one of the focus areas for my function is how to deal with corruption. And not only in India. So we're looking at all the laws, meaning especially the UK Bribery Act or the US FCPA or the French SAPIN 2, along with the India laws, because all of these laws are also applicable to us as an affiliate. So we look at all of these things in our compliance program and in our governance program as well. So that's a little bit that is unique, I feel, about what we need to implement here. Now going back to the strategy and how we set objectives for the function, we are quite aligned with our roadmap. So we create a roadmap for 5 years into the future. And if you see, our focus areas and levers are actually aligned to the roadmap. So we look at 3 main pillars for our function for governance. One is topmost, which is risk management. And I don't mean just an ERM, but managing risk per se. Looking at how we set up the governance culture to drive the culture and to be a trusted advisor, as we say in IIA, for the internal audit function and the controls function, as well as the compliance function, to be adding value to the organization. So that's what we've set up as our 3 pillars. And each and every pillar has particular programs around it. And then we measure ourselves based on KPIs, which are derived from the programs that we have organized around these 3 pillars. So I'll get into a little more detail of these 3 pillars a bit later. So the first pillar was risk management. So like I said, it's not just managing ERM exercise. So of course, we do have the global risk mapping, which is nothing but an ERM exercise. We manage our top risks with our management committee. We have specific risks that we look at in terms of bribery and corruption and fraud, influence peddling. So we have a bank of 130 risks, which we evaluate to see whether they've become more or less important for us as the years go by, especially considering COVID. Some of those became more important. So we had procedures and programs around those areas. So that's what we looked at. Of course, we also look at process risk. We try and build risk management dashboards for our management to take better decisions. We are trying to also continually update our risk universe and registers to be in time with the current changes. And we have certain focus areas that we look at in the year. So these could change depending on what risk is important to us. So if you see, for now, it's inventory management for us, reviews of the delegation of authority. We manage that as a function for the company. And also we ensure the segregation of duties. So just to give you an idea of what the focus areas are. And then we have KPIs on each of these areas. So we look at how we'll have certain KPIs on inventory management, for example. We will do certain audits focused on how delegation has been implemented, or we look at how many mitigation plans are actually implemented. So these are the kind of KPIs that we would then develop based on our pillars. The really interesting one is on the governance culture, the second pillar that we talked about, because this is something that I feel that this organization does actually really well as a group. It is done quite well. It's based on the fact that the tone at the top drives the culture. So we measure, and we have a lot of tone at the top where the entire managing team, senior managers, middle managers, managers at every level are given certain ideas to communicate. Of course, it comes straight down from the group CEO on a zero tolerance policy. So it's quite well communicated. We have a lot of awareness sessions, training sessions, and we track all of these. These become our KPIs ultimately to measure how well we've done. This is on the more on the preventive side. On the detective side, then to see how well our program is implemented, we look at, okay, did we have fraud incidents, corruption incidents, or did we have attempted frauds which were then detected on time and we didn't have any loss? So these are the measures that we put in place to see how well our culture is actually adopted. We do a lot of internal control awareness also. So we have anti-corruption controls, work with our accounts and finance team to see how controls are set up in their processes. So this is how we sort of make sure that we have a culture that is quite high in terms of governance and supports our zero tolerance objective overall. And the third one, which is on value addition, the third pillar. So we do this through various approaches. The first one being we try to be as inclusive and as involved as possible with the business teams. So we don't want to remain a support function. So we work with our business teams. We have 3-4 businesses, and we participate in their business meetings to see what's happening, what is the latest process improvements they're doing. If they're automating something, we get in to look at controls right from the beginning. We're involved in implementation. We involve ourselves in a lot of cross-functional teams. We get involved in digital and innovation teams as well to see, again, what the company is thinking, what line they're going towards. And the fact that since we're looking at every process across the organization, we have that view of an overall view of the company and where it wants to head, which direction it's going. And we can contribute because of that also. And we have also the unique ability where we're looking at very detailed controls at the very basic level as well. So we have the helicopter view as well as the detailed view. And that's what we bring to the business teams so that we can advise them should they need it. So that's how we get a seat at the table as well. Also through our internal audits, which is a regular part of our business, we have a lot of improvements that we bring about. We track that in terms of rupees crore that we have saved or increased revenue per se. So that's one of the KPIs, for example. And we also resolve a lot of questions. So we're sort of like a help desk. So people call us when they have questions. Okay, this is the process that I'm trying to implement. How do I build a control into this process to ensure that we don't get into trouble later? So these are the kind of questions or advice that my team and I get all the time. So that helps us ensure that we are adding value to the organization. I'm also part of the ethics and the POSH committees. So that ensures that if there's any investigations, unfortunately, if there are any investigations that need to be done, we are also part of those. So that's a little bit about our 3 pillars. And then I have a little bit more on what we do in compliance and internal control. We can look at that in a little more detail. Or if you have questions, we can do it that way. I mean, whatever's better or easier for us to do.
I think you can complete the presentation. That might be better. What do you say, Divji?
Yes, I think, Smriti, let's complete the presentation and then we get into some questions, for you, and which will highlight,
Sure.
what we're doing, and then we can get on to the conclusion.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
So this part of the program that I wanted to speak about was on the compliance program. So it's a very well-defined program in TotalEnergies. So it has it has a whole wheel of, or a circle of things that we do. Some of which we talked about already, which is that we set the culture at the top. We have risk management. We're also the owner of the procedures of the company. So while business creates procedures, they are vetted by us. We assist them to make them also. And of course, it's them who are implementing it. But we get in when they're making the policies and procedures itself. And we have about 300 in the company. So that's a lot of maintenance also of the procedures that we need to look at. Training and communication, we talked about a little bit. We manage that very easily through annual communication calendars to ensure that we cover the various topics that we need to, which cover an entire program and all the functions related to it. One of the unique things we did, because when you talk about compliance or controls or audit, people tend to feel, they go onto a backseat. Oh, an auditor's coming, and they think, okay, there's a police who's going to come and tell us our mistakes. So to help people in not looking at it like that, but more as an advisor and make it more approachable, we run contests like quizzes on our policies and procedures. And then, so you see that little icon on the right. So we ran something where they had to film themselves demonstrating a policy. And then we use those short films, like 1 or 2 minutes. And then we use that to train newcomers and things like that. So we call them the compliance heroes or champions, and they are present in every function. They help us implement the program better. They understand the policies also really well. There's of course a reward and recognition program around it. So that ensures that we get more acceptance within the company. And they also understand what we do better, because we spend a little more time training them on the policies and procedures, so that they can be spokespersons across the company dealing with these subjects. And some of the other interesting campaigns we ran was a Speak Up campaign, where we had focus group discussions across the company to understand from people what kind of issues they run into for controls or for compliance or fraud related incidents that they are supposed coming up with. The fact that they should be free to talk to anyone. So we had every single person in the top management sitting with a group of employees. And then the senior employees also will continue to do this, and that's how it will flow across the organization. So it tells the organization that we're here to listen, not just to tell you what to do, but also to listen to you. So it goes both ways. So that's something unique that we look at. We, of course, have, we run investigations. We do something that is, again, I think a little bit unique, though I'm sure some organizations do it, is when we have certain cases in terms of fraud or attempted frauds, we use those to tell our organization about it, of course, leaving out the confidential details, but for them to understand what kind of risks do come up. And since they are live cases, people connect better, and they are more vigilant then, and they look out for it more. So that's also something that we do. And we have a very strong network in the company, where we have multiple officers, like how I am for my company in India. We have many across the globe. So we're quite well connected in terms of Yammer groups or sharing resources, SharePoint, etc., where we save a lot of the stuff that we do. We present our unique ideas, and then similarly, we get ideas from globally from the group. So that really helps us to stay on top of risks. It helps us to learn and train. It understand early warning signals, which, for example, COVID was more prevalent in Europe before it came to India. There was almost a 2-month lag, by the time it hit us. So a lot of the measures that they took in those countries, we knew about and we could prepare for. So our BCPs were stronger, for example. We were more prepared. So this is how we use and leverage on our relationships across the globe. So that's something that's quite nice, that's available to us. And also the programs that we handle in terms of economic sanctions, that's an important one in the current scenario, considering Russia and Ukraine and the sanctions that all the Western countries have because of the war going on. And India is in that unique position where we are not participating in the sanctions. So in TotalEnergies, where European sanctions apply to us, US sanctions apply to us, but India is not, in the sanctions. So for us, that becomes doubly important to make sure that, especially when we're looking at export and import, we are not working with products that have certain origins or with suppliers or customers that come from sanctioned countries. So that for us has become quite important at this point in time. So something unique. One of the other things that me and my team also participate in is something that we call the 3 Ps. So whether it's on personal data protection, which is quite nascent in India, but again, the GDPR in Europe is quite established now. So we need to implement that, considering we're a European affiliate. We have document retention policies and, of course, protection and preservation of information. And this team is also headed by me in the company. So it's quite a unique experience, little bit governance and a little bit something else as well, more on compliance. So second line of defense, not the third line here. And one of the other things we do also is, because it's a compliance function, we do not onboard vendors or large customers without going through a due diligence program. So that means we look at the corruption risks from a lot more detailed perspective. We have tools that help us do that. So that's quite a large activity for us as well. Something that is unique to India as a country is the fact that when we deal with public officials, it's quite risky from anti-fraud and corruption perspective. So that's something that we look at again with a little more detail to see whether fees are not success-based or have an element which could possibly lead to corruption. So there's certain things we do. We try and bring transparency on our dealings with public officials, because obviously everyone has to deal with ministries, with various agencies. You need to get permissions. So we look at those with a little more detail to ensure transparency. Moving more to internal control and internal audit. So this just gives an idea of the activities we do around audit and control. For us, internal audits, it's a fixed formal internal audit plan that looks at the whole gamut of activities and the process. It's a risk-based internal audit plan. We have co-source partners that help us execute it. We also have an internal team, because we believe that the internal team has the necessary knowledge of the business to carry out these audits in the best manner possible. However, since we cannot have every expertise in-house, we also use co-source partners to help us with very specialized and focused areas. So that's how we leverage the relationship. We also approve, we have a lot of second line of defense in terms of control functions that we do, like, for example, giving access rights in the ERP to people with ensuring that there is no conflict of interest and there is enough segregation of duties. Same thing goes with the delegation of authority. We ensure that the limits are within what is required for the person to carry out their job. We run continuous auditing programs, which is what the company calls FACT. It's basically an analytical tool that pops up certain exception reports on a continuous basis. We review them every quarter and we send it to business if we need further explanation, or if they're false positives, we need to relook at them and then deal with it again. But it's a great way to know red flags across our transactions in the organization. Then we have also self-assessment for our control activities. There are self-assessments that are run right from the top management to the businesses as well. So the enterprise level controls are run by self-assessments on the top management, and then process level controls, which of course get supported by control reviews as well as internal audits. And we have multiple layers of audits within the organization. We have focused audits on themes. So for example, we will look at maintenance as our plant as a theme. So across locations, we will look at particular activities within maintenance, for example. Or we'll even do more softer areas, or like auditing a communications strategy, or ensuring that we have enough internal communication. It's well embedded within the organization. So we do a very wide range of audits as well. It covers not only the mainstream risks and the mainstream functions, but also very different and unique themes to ensure that we are on track with and meeting our objectives as an organization. I think that's it in terms of control. Just I jotted down some best practices, some of which I've shared with you, but some of the others is that we have a mixed team. We look at having not only chartered accountants, but also technical people, because we are a company of engineers. Ultimately, it's oil, gas, energy, LPG, lubricants. So we need the technical expertise as well on the team that helps us do our operational audits better. We have champions across the organization who support not only the audits, but also to spread the message, like we talked about earlier. And sometimes we invite guest auditors who can participate in maybe just one or two projects, and then they go back to the function where they belong. So that's something that we've implemented, and it works really well because you get a different perspective. The auditors learn just as much as the person who's coming on board from a different function. So it's a two-way knowledge sharing process. We have a bit of automation in the function as well. So we automate our due diligences through workflows. We have an annual conflict of interest declaration where every employee declares whether they have a conflict or not. These are all automated. Our self-assessments, the controls self-assessment is automated. Our economic sanctions pop-ups are also automated. So we get alerts when we deal, or when we're even planning to deal with sanctioned entities. We of course use risk maps to monitor our risk. I think, yes, I've talked about some of these things. Yes, so one of the other unique things we do in terms of communication, and because governance is something that the culture is something that we really pay a lot of emphasis to, is we start meetings, most people start meetings with safety moments. We do that also. But in certain meetings, we also use compliance moments or control moments to start meetings, so that there is focus on that as well. So it's balanced there. We have a special tool which we use for training. It's across the organization actually. So all our mandatory training is through videos and animated cartoons sometimes, and they have quizzes at the end to help people learn better, and these need to be refreshed. So it ensures that these messages are on the top of people's mind. And of course, for new people, it's great because they get to learn at their own pace, but they are still onboarded with all the messages that we want to give them, which is what the company's code of conduct stands for. So yeah, that's pretty much it in terms of the best practices. That's what I had. Yeah, thank you.
Very good, Smriti. It was, I think, a very comprehensive presentation, I must say. May I request you to close the presentation so that there will be a better visibility?
Yes.
Yeah, wonderful. So I was mesmerized, and I think from now onwards we should have given the speakers more time, especially from the way in which you kind of summarized all the activities that you have been doing. TotalEnergies is what you say, but I think you and your department is a total employee. Both are TEs, but really very comprehensive work, I must say, as a start. There was one thing that really hit my eye, Smriti, when you talked about your compliance, and you said that you have a inclusive approach, and you also use the word involved. These are very nice words, and it really touches you. Tell me how difficult, and because you said in your involvement, you or your inclusiveness, you are indirectly in touch with the businesses. So how easy or how difficult has that been, or what are the challenges that you really face? If it can just summarize them very quickly. Thank you.
Sure. So when we began, of course, it was a challenge because people don't look at the auditors with very friendly, or as being, you know, it's looked at as if you're looking for mistakes, but that is the perception that we needed to change. So that's why we focus a lot more on the building the culture and less on policing and detective activities. So we go very heavy in terms of the uh, preventive activities, and that's how we build trust. And the fact that people can call us for any issue and it doesn't turn up in an audit report after that, that helps, because then they're seeing that we truly want to help them make a robust process or a robust system or whatever it is that they're trying to do. Even when we go for a new line of business, for example, we would be present in those meetings to look at risks. So that's how we ensure that they look at us more in a more friendly manner.
Yes, yes. I could see you also had 87 requests which you closed. You gave a number to that statement. Yeah, Devji.
Smriti, before I ask my question, there's one small thing. How many people do you have in India other than your outsourced auditors?
In my team, so
In your team.
my direct team is 3 people only.
Okay.
But in our other organizations, we have a few people who would be responsible for compliance and control.
Great.
Because there are multiple entities.
Because I asked this question because you're doing so much of work.
I know.
As Satish said, so comprehensively covered in those 6 or 7 slides which you showed, that it would take such a huge manpower strength to do that. But I think as systems are institutionalized and as they work in an automated fashion across the institution, it's really commendable how you are heading that function and, ensuring that all these things work. Because ultimately you require the gray cells and the hard work to make it work, whatever the level of automation. So there's so much of it happening across. And there are so many questions, which are coming to my mind, as Satish said, we can hold a week-long workshop on it, to cover everything. But very quickly, 2 or 3 questions, because I'll ask you all together, because there's so many questions which are there running through my mind. So one is, again, let me first say that I was so happy to hear when Satish said 87 requests, sorted out for internal controls and other process requests, So first of all, congratulations to setting up a help desk, help desk, because that's the first thing which an internal auditor should be doing. Okay, now here comes my questions. First is risk management as a function. You've highlighted at various places in the presentations that you get connected with others on Yammer and other heads from across the geography. But risk management is a very critical function, and there are a lot of internal and external risks. So how does that risk management register or that risk matrix get populated? How does it get identified from across the world and from India, from different people, processes, etc. That's the first thing. Second is regarding the corporate culture. You talked about governance culture, you did mention about some parameters, but can you just dwell upon more to make us understand how do you monitor the culture of the organization, the governance culture which is there. And the third is the fact data analytics, which you talked about. So how does that fact data analytics get fed into? Because of course you take care of the red flags or the deviations, but who actually designs the algorithms, which get into the system, and what objectives should get into the system to be monitored worldwide? You can take any one first, and but I have so many more questions. You're doing so much of work, But okay, I'll stop at these 3, for today. So that's Smriti. In any order, you can take up any one in any order. Yeah.
Oh, we'll stick to the way you asked them. So risk management first. What we do is to make our lives easier, because of course the organization is across the globe. So there is a lot of internal and external risks faced. But if I have to look at just the organization that I'm primarily responsible for, I focus on that. We have a brainstorming exercise. We do a bottom-up exercise as well as a top-down one.
Okay.
So that ensures that we have a comprehensive list of risks. So the first thing is just to list out every risk perceived. And then we go about ensuring that, okay, this one is so important, or rating the risks, etc. And that's how we ensure that we have finally come to the risks that we want to actually and really focus on in terms of the mitigations. So this also helps us cover every type of risk because we have a diversity of views that come in. So that ensures that our risks are well thought out. So just the brief answer to your question.
Is it done on a yearly basis? This brainstorming is done on a yearly basis?
So yes, the top 10 we brainstorm on a yearly basis, but the entire relook, like a ground up and a bottom down approach, like full new, is once in 3 years.
Great. Right.
But of course, if there are risks that come up, which, for example, like COVID or like a war, then yes, they require special consideration. So we have special things for that.
Right.
Your second question was on governance culture.
Yes.
I think what I understood was, how do we measure it? You wanted to understand more measures of the culture.
Sure.
So like I said earlier, it's more of getting preventive measures in. So there's a lot of communication. I haven't shared the numbers, but we measure everything from internal awareness sessions. We have external awareness sessions, meaning with our partners, with our suppliers, even with our distributors. We also train our security agencies, our recruitment agencies. We do it to a huge extent. So communication for us about our values is extremely strong, because we feel that if people understand what we stand for, then the acceptance level and the compliance is much higher than policing them and detecting it and then telling them, okay, you did this wrong. So that's what we focus on. That's why our communication plan is quite robust. It's quite large. And that's why we take help from people within the business to also pass the message on. And it's not just my team doing it, because we cannot reach. It's not possible. We have 600 people. We have 2,000 vendors. We have 700 distributors. We cannot reach. And still we ensure that we try and cover, maybe not all vendors, but at least distributors and employees in a 3-year period, we cover everybody. So we track it at that level. So the culture is driven from messaging right from the top. So every employee meeting, even if it starts with a safety message, there is compliance somewhere, at least 5 or 10 minutes that someone is talking about it, not just the CMD, not just me as the compliance officer or the VP compliance and control, but every single person in the management committee is talking about it. So that's how we make it very pervasive. And then we measure all of that. And that is also forms a part of our reporting to our head office. So they are also having the same amount of focus that we do. And everybody across the organization talks the same language. So that helps us reiterating these messages. So that's how we ensure culture, and we measure it in quite a bit of detail. And like we said, the detection, or how do we know that the program is well implemented, is that we don't have too many cases. So we look at, because we're a global organization, we look at the transparency index, and India rates pretty high on that in terms of corruption. So there are certain things which are mandated by the company for us to do, but we do so much more than that, we have statistics that are very good. So just that whole culture is inbuilt into all of us. So for us, it's easy then to look at it. So we don't have too many issues in terms of incidents that we need to report or look at. So that's how we reduce our investigations. We don't have too many because of this reason. So that's on culture. I don't know if you have any further questions on this, so I move to the last one.
And the last one was fact. How do you
Yes.
calculate fact? What are the objectives? How does one set the objectives in fact?
So the way the company is structured is it's quite good, because it's in one way, it's very central because there's one system that's used throughout every single entity across the globe. So if we use one single ERP, it's very structured in terms of the chartered accounts and everything. So it's similar across. For that kind of business, it's very similar. So obviously they can collate better. And we run these fact analysis across the group, which means some of these are common. Because of the fact that the system is so homogeneous, some of them are set up at the head office level and we just have to apply them. That reduces the amount of time I need to spend on it drastically. And then there will be certain ones which are unique to us because we've done some amount of customization, or our business is unique, or the country needs that kind of focus in a particular risk. Then we design those analysis ourselves and we carry it out ourselves. So that's how we balance it.
Great. In terms of numbers, just plain, if it is not confidential, in terms of numbers, what's the kind of analytics, which goes into fact, few hundreds or a few tens, or what are the objectives like, which are fed into fact analytics?
It's kind of difficult to say because it's more than numbers. It's more on certain, because of the fact that this organization has been around for a while, there's experience that's been built. So there are certain objectives that are set or risks that are identified. So for example, if we're looking at an economic sanction risk, then there will be certain alerts that are based on that. There will be certain alerts that are based on duplicate vendors or, POPR invoice, the whole cycle. Procure to pay, obviously we have some amount of concentration in terms of those analysis, but that's how we set up. So it's not so much numbers as much as it is risks.
So great. Wonderful, Smriti, thank you very much for explaining this out. Satish.
Yeah, I had one question on this speak up, and I think my ears actually got tickled when I heard this. So speak up is something which really organizations need to do, because employees, as you very correctly said, employees should not only be told, but also get opportunities to speak up. So while this speak up is a good concept, I'm sure that you must have had some experiences when you were talking to people. People either talk too much or they go all over the place, and then, given an opportunity, probably for the last 10 years, he or she wanted to speak up, didn't get the chance. Once having got the chance, has a tendency to kind of, talk on the outliers. So how do you kind of make meaning out of what they said and actually pick up? The important thing here is to pick up the essence of what is being said, So any experiences on that, Smriti?
So yes, you're absolutely right, Satish. When you invite people to speak, they will speak on everything. So we do include in those sessions the to-dos and what not to do in these speak-up sessions. So obviously there are certain subjects. For example, we tell them these are subjects for HR, and those will come up when you're talking about speak-up sessions, right? So that's normal, that's expected. Every organization will have that. So we tell them that, yes, you will still be heard, but you just need to go to the right forum. So we set that right in the beginning. Not to say that we still don't get some people saying it. Yes, we park them. But we do ensure that they get either an avenue to go to for someone to hear them. So we send them to a different avenue, or then we are able to address it right there and then. We collate the questions that we get. We look at key messages from each of these discussions, and then we discuss it at the management committee actually. So exit interview feedback, as well as these kind of speak up sessions. We analyze what is coming out as trends, so that then we can improve ourselves. So that's how we look at it.
I think, Satish, one last question before we conclude. So I think, Smriti, I'll just ask you, how do you handle all this? Because I'm still stuck with all the things that you do. So please explain, how do you handle all this?
I don't know what to tell you. I mean, it's what we do. It's a part of life.
But that is
I have
very
a great
difficult.
team, but,
and secondly, also there is a transition for you from family-owned businesses to a multinational culture. So it's a sea change, whatever you may say, from Tata Power and Bombay Dyeing to TotalEnergies, because this is a multinational company with institutionalized systems across the world, and that's Indian run companies, of course, good systems, but Indian run companies. So first there is a change from, a family owned business, Indian companies, to a multinational culture. And number two, the slides that you showed, you just picked out few slides and showed us, but that's quite a handful. So how do you handle it?
So, just to my previous experience has helped me actually to be able to deal with it. Each one has been unique. So if you look at the Tata Group, they are unique in terms of it was a very specialized function because the scale we were looking at was huge. So being specialized in one particular function helped me get into the depth of that function and know every single detail. And working on the ground as well as reviewing work, that gives you the whole gamut of what to expect and how to drive the team as well. And then being in a smaller not organization, but a smaller internal audit shop or a governance shop also gives you the experience to be able to do multiple things, because you have to do everything yourself. You don't have specialized functions anymore. Neither do you have that kind of manpower. So then you get the experience of doing a wide variety of things. You may not be able to get to the depth of everything, but you get a wide variety. And here I have a mix of both. So it's sort of the culmination of past experience, I guess. And yes, I have a great team. So that, of course, helps to get everything done.
Great. Really great.
So it's going to be a difficult task to kind of summarize in, say, 2 or 3 minutes what exactly Smriti spoke. But here's my very humble attempt to do so. Right at the top, I think you said zero tolerance. And I guess that is one big takeaway from me, saying that, zero tolerance, we are not going to tolerate anything. And it's a responsibility of all employees. It's not a responsibility of risk management or internal control, internal audit, management, one level, second level, third level, but responsibility of all employees. You operating in 140 countries, having over 1,000 affiliates, over 100,000 employees. You're responsible for the UK Bribery Act, for the FCPA, for the French laws, some SAPIN2, SAPIN2, probably that's how it is to be pronounced. So there's a wide variety of things that you need to get handle on. And that's why I think Dibji was a little, very too focused in his questions about how many people you have and how do you manage it more than how many people you really have. You spoke about risk management, the governance culture, when you said that we are trusted advisors. You spoke about the value addition. So the 3 pillars that you then elaborated upon. And I could say risk inventory management, because in the short time of 20 minutes, you've been focusing on inventory management. And I guess that's an important aspect for a business, which you have been doing spot on. You also talked about DOA and the SOA concepts as well. In the governance culture, and for which you, of course, gave a very detailed and very specific, detailed but specific answer on the governance culture. But you said again, tone at the top, zero tolerance. You started with it. In between, you mentioned about it again. And to have preventive and detective measures, I think this is a very important takeaway for any auditor, that we must have a mix and match of both. You have to be the policeman at the signal. You need to be a policeman standing away from the signal. A policeman cannot stand at all the signals in the city. And therefore, preventive and detective, both are important. The internal control awareness programs that you run, the organization, your department, whatever, runs, tracks, and follows up. I think this is the other important thing that I got out of this. In the value addition part, one question I already asked on the inclusive approach, the involvement with the cross-functional teams, being a trusted advisor. You give the helicopter view as well as the transactional view, and that is why people will come up to you. That's another lesson, a big lesson for all of us, that you must have as an internal auditor, as a chief audit executive of any organization that one leads, the ability of the auditor to mix and match the helicopter view as well as the transaction view helps us to get that involvement of the businesses, which is something that I really learned a lot. You're also part of the POSH committees, which means that there is so much of diversity in your work. And I mean diversity not in gender diversity, but a diverse range of work that you do. Your compliance system that you spoke about, the tone at the top, the risk management, standards and procedures, training and communication, how easily you've been able to track the training programs, the communication of it, the follow-up audits. The sanctions was, I think, something very unique in all these 25 episodes that we've had. I'm counting this one as well. I think on the sanctions part, I'm hearing this as the first time, and also the focus that is really there. The Speak Up program I already spoke about, and I already asked you a question about it. The 3 Ps, that is the privacy, protection, and the preservation, was something very good. Your internal control work that you do is so comprehensive because it includes internal audit, due diligence, SOD, DOA, data analytics, SAPM 2 controls, internal controls, policies, and procedures. So it was absolutely a very well laid out different perspective that we got. The last slide, I think, was again a very unique aspect of the way in which you've been able to leverage the internal audit function in the company, because you have a mixed team. And I think this is very important. And the examples that you gave out of guest auditors is something that I think it's very important to have a mix of teams. It's not, auditing is not everything about accounts. I mean, just going talking to accounts. It's about businesses. It's about processes. It's about controls. It's about anticipating, hindsight, foresight. So it's not just accounting, which is there, which is on which you are spot on. You also talked about automation, the continuous control monitoring through FACT, the fraud and risk corruption risk map, your ready toolkits which you have for compliance, your network of compliance officers right across, your e-learning, compliance and control moments. And this was a superb slide. In fact, I had jotted down the third question as you spoke about the control and compliance and control moments, and I wanted to hear a little more about it. But you yourself very beautifully explained that just as you have safety moments in any presentation, you also get this opportunity to either show clips or talk about these compliance moments so that people across the organizations understand the importance of compliance and what it must be. So this is my humble attempt to kind of, I was writing at a very fast speed. I think now I'm not used to it, but I had to do it. I had no choice because the part of summarizing was on me. It was a happy task, let me tell you this. But I learned so much in the last, say, 55 minutes or so. And I'm very happy that Smriti, you agreed to come up here. And I always knew you as a person, as an auditor, as a very professional colleague. But today I have understood you as a total, pun intended, professional. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Smriti. Wonderful. All the best to you. All the best. I can only say that, Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Deepji.
Thank you.
Thank you.